We're here to explore diverse career paths through personal experiences and real-life examples.
And also to offer profound insights to inspire your professional journey.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Work Without Borders. I'm Flora.
Hi, everyone. I'm Calvin.
Today, we're honored to introduce Lori, the President and Chief Executive Officer of the Chartered Professional Accountants of British Columbia. So join us in extending a warm welcome to Lori as we express our gratitude for her invaluable contributions to the accounting professions and agreeing to join our podcast. And then I hope you guys are getting ready to be inspired by her remarkable insights, especially in the intersection of ESG and CPA professionals. Hi, Lori.
Hi, Flora. It's a pleasure to be here today.
Um, so I will quickly introduce Lori, but I would love to hear from her directly as well. So Lori, as I said, is the president and CEO of CPABC, the training, governing, and a regulatory body for over 40,000 CPA members and then 6,000 CPA students. It's a big organization, and then I'm sure a lot of people are very familiar with this organization. Lori leads the organization's executive management committee and represents the province on the Canadian CPA Professions National Council of Chief Executives. She holds an LLB and a BCL from McGill University and a BCom from the University of Manitoba and a fellow of the CPA of British Columbia. And then what also impressed me about Lori's experience is she's been actively involved in the community, including serving as a governor and a past chair of the Greater Vancouver Board of Trade, and on the board of the CPA Western School of Business, on the faculty advisory board of the UBC Sauder School of Business, which is my alma mater, and on the Dean's Advisory Committee at the UBC Center of Business Law. So again, it's our true honor to have you on our podcast, Lori.
Yes, welcome to our podcast, Lori.
Thank you, and thank you for the generous introduction.
So why don't you give us a little bit of introduction by yourself?
Sure. Well, I, as you point out, really have valued finding ways to give back to our community and trying to make our community more sustainable, more resilient, more prosperous all around. And so that really has been my focus, finding ways to contribute both through my accounting and my legal backgrounds, helping individuals, corporations, but also the broader society. And I find it really important to me to find those extra ways to give back and contribute. And we have a topic today around ESG, and ESG is really about just that, making society even better for everyone through a number of ways, through strategy, through measurement, through just having that focus on ESG. And that goes to, again, my bigger purpose, trying to find ways to make our society better.
That's absolutely inspiring. So, Lori, for the audience who don't really know about what ESG is, could you please start with telling us what ESG stands for and what each pillar interacts with your realm, which is financial professionals?
Sure. So ESG, for those who don't know, stands for environmental, social, and governance. And it is a fancy acronym, but really is just a way of saying that an organization is going to track and report on certain non-financial risks and opportunities. And I emphasize non-financial risks and opportunities. And so at a high level, it's these non-financial risks and opportunities that go directly to the resiliency and sustainability of an organization. And you asked about how that intersects with the role of financial professionals. Well, financial professionals use these different factors to really drive investment decisions and to lead corporate strategies.
Yeah, because I found it interesting. You mentioned like twice non-financial, non-financial. Yet we're talking about it with the intersection with the financial professionals.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And what ESG is an expansion of how to measure how an organization is doing to take into account the broadest array of risks and the broadest array of opportunities including those that are not normally found in financial reporting,
Hmm.
in the
Mm,
normal financial reports of an organization. So it's looking at things more holistically, which really provides a stronger measure of the overall sustainability of an organization.
mm. When have you noticed that the ESG has become so substantial and significant in the companies growing as well as in the CPA field?
Yeah, so it has really taken on a life of its own in the last number of years. And I think it started back, in the 90s, but there's been a lot more focus since 2021. And that's the year when a global organization called the IFRS Foundation, it's an accounting body, announced the creation of the ISSB, the International Sustainability Standards Board. And basically, what they
Mm.
did is announce that there's going to be uniform standards on sustainability.
Mm,
And it's these uniform standards that are causing organizations across the board to just think again in terms of how they should measure, manage, and ultimately report on these ESG factors. And so that's really, those financial statements go to the heart of what CPAs do. And we have an accounting body that's saying,
Mm.
here are these new standards, these sustainability standards. And that's really the tie between ESG and the accounting profession.
So this sounds like a more of a international global drive. Does it work with like the federal CPA and then trickling down to the provincial level, or is it the other way around, or how does that work?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So basically, these new standards, and there has been a tradition of many different standards, as you know,
Yeah.
internationally for a long time. But these new ones that have been announced, they are being formed internationally, and they will be taken on board in Canada, so through the Canadian Sustainability Standards Board. But it will
Right.
be the jurisdiction of the different provinces ultimately to regulate those professionals who are using these standards. So it does trickle down and impact starting internationally, but it has an impact federally and also provincially.
Wow, thanks for the clarification. I guess that's a very good education.
mhm,
That also inspired me for my next question because I understand it is increasingly important for the financial professionals, but since it's a new standard that they are going to follow, they are kind of like brought into a new era of keeping ESG in their mind.
Yes, no, absolutely. So the standards won't necessarily be applicable to everyone.
Okay.
Currently, they are voluntary. That said, there's many
Oh.
organizations that will choose to adopt them, and also some organizations that may be compelled to adopt them as compliance requirements change. But it is a good question because it really goes to the heart of why an organization should follow ESG
mm,
principles and try to embrace it, right? Like you have to
Hmm.
think about what your why is. Why are you doing this?
Hmm.
And currently in Canada, if you think about compliance, there's very few organizations that must do it.
mm,
So usually right now, at least today, it's voluntary. That said, there's other important reasons why an organization might choose to try to adopt an ESG strategy and report. One could be access to capital. And access to capital really is trying to appeal to both providers of equity and also banks. And right now, we know that a very large percentage of institutional investors are really looking at the extent to which ESG principles are adopted by potential targets for their investment, and that's important to them. And we also know that more than half of the world's largest banks have signed on to the UN's principles for responsible banking. So that means it's really important. If you're
Oh,
just trying to get a loan, it's very important to have ESG. So
right.
you could adopt ESG strategy for compliance reasons, for access to capital, for risk mapping. So you know
mm,
that broadest array of risks. It could be for opportunity mapping, so you understand all the different opportunities out there. It could be, to appeal to talent, to get people to come work for you, or it could be because someone in the supply chain thinks it's important, so you want to be able to increase your trade with that other party, so therefore you pick up on the ESG side. Or it might just be that ESG in itself is a market opportunity. Like, for example, you are really into um, sustainability in terms of what you're offering to customers. So that could be your reason. But I think all this goes to say that you need to know your why. Why are you embracing that ESG? And it could be for any
Mm,
Mm.
number of reasons.
wow. Do you foresee the future of like the ESG coming back and then to reshape the CPA curriculum or like the requirement even for any financial professionals?
Absolutely, and it already is. So
Mm,
already today, we are incorporating in the ESG or the CPA certification program different ESG principles and
Mm.
thinking around ESG, and that will continue to be the case because we certainly are finding that any finance professional needs to have that knowledge
Yeah.
around ESG because it's just expected.
mm. And just to follow up on that question, right? Because ESG is something that it's like, I would say more of a social responsibility, and as well as like that's just sometimes it's go beyond numbers. Like, is there like a certain standard? Like, how do you standardize if some company is actually following the SG guidance? Like, where it does that line,
Yeah, because
yeah.
Calvin is a data scientist by profession, so he's very, very interested in numbers as well.
Yeah, no, that is a terrific question. And that is the exact reason why these new ISSB standards have been so important. Because until now, there has been just such a range of different standards that organizations can choose to follow or not. And even within those standards, there's a lot of flexibility in terms of what people want to focus on. So it's hard to have that direct
Mm,
comparability between organizations in the way that you might expect or hope for.
mm,
But the idea with the new ISSB standards is that at least organizations, when they are reporting, they're reporting based upon certain principles that are
mm,
aligned. And so it's not a science, that's for sure, but it's getting closer in that direction. In terms of just having principles that need to be followed to ensure the integrity of the reporting.
Mm.
that's good to know. Yeah.
Yeah, because we do have a lot of friends who are trying to get a CPA and or just got their CPA, which is a big project, and then there is a lot of investment of time and energy, and then I think ESG, if it stays like too vague or too abstract, it's kind of like not very motivating in their super busy schedules. Also, if it remains a buzzword, everybody is, oh, ESG, ESG, but we don't really know how they can apply in their own career development,
Mm,
then that won't be as appealing. I mean, we all know it's important, but it's just how I think human being works, right?
Right, right. Well, what we are finding is that many new or aspiring CPAs are really inspired by ESG being an aspect of the profession.
Ah,
Many of our new or aspiring CPAs want to make a difference to the world. They want to find that purpose and they
mm,
want to be able to contribute. And ESG is one way by which they can do that. And ESG, in my mind, is not a niche area. It is really core to what every CPA will be doing.
mm,
And it really is all about integrating these ESG principles into what you're doing, whether you are an external advisor, you're doing, say, assurance for an organization, or
mm,
if you're internal, say you're in a CFO role or a controller, you're all about trying to drive strategy and figuring out how to measure and report on that. And so these things are inspiring for our new CPAs who want to find that purpose.
mm. That's great. Because I think over the last decades, we have seen, for example, the Big Four, there's like Department of Sustainability, right? And then like there's a lot of like financial professionals and just consultants, and then they come into this field. So like I guess from that perspective, it is a very motivating field. And then like so I think it's really great to see that how CPA is been interacting with ESG, because I think as Lori shared, even for me, like I thought at the beginning, like this is just maybe like a C-suite levels, like
Problem.
yeah, exactly, right? Like, so it is really good to know that right now we're going down to like CPA or like anybody who's pursuing this financial reporting career path, and then we need to be mindful of our ESG responsibilities. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I think it's also fair to say that there will always be ESG specialists, people that really
Mm,
know the deep intricacies of certain things related to ESG. And many of that actually is grown or built within an organization, as that organization has very specific things for it. So there'll be the specialists, but also the generalists, the CPA who is doing, say, tax returns or doing internal management accounting, for example, they all will need to have a level of understanding of ESG. From time to time, they'll need to bring in that specialist, but I think every finance professional should have some level of understanding of ESG. And in fact, finance professionals are so uniquely placed to be able to take on this role. They have the reputation for that trust and integrity, which is necessary. They also are knowledgeable about financial reporting, assurance, risk management, and
Mm,
ultimately strategy, how to really drive strategy. So it is the finance professionals who are so well situated to be able to really lead on ESG.
mm,
Yeah, Lori, I would like you to unpack it a little bit more because at the panel discussion we've met, we had you, which is from the CPA perspective, and then we had another professional from Van City, another professional from Talus from operation, and then the Van City profession is from investment point. And I remember that your discussion, one of your discussions about why this whole ESG reporting or initiatives in a company should be led by the CFO per se. I would like you to unpack it a little bit, like why this is important and how the CPABC is driving the leadership piece of this.
Yeah, so I think one thing that we saw in that panel is ESG to be successful, you really need to know the business. And that is, in fact, where a lot of ESG professionals that we see out there today have come from. They've come from deep knowledge of operations of their organization, and they're able to use that and build knowledge around ESG in particular. So, ESG is really all about knowing the business and determining how to make an impact in terms of sustainability goals based on that knowledge of the business. And finance professionals usually, in order to do their job, they have to have a really intimate knowledge base in terms of the business. So
Yeah.
they're really well situated to be able to take that knowledge they have about the operations and build on that in order to make an impact from an ESG perspective. Also, the finance professionals will certainly recognize that the reason why you measure something is really to do a good job of implementing a strategy. It's
mm,
that saying, what gets measured gets managed, right? So you don't just measure something; you need to have a reason for measuring it. So you need to have
Yeah.
that strategy first. So you need to figure out your why. Like, why are you doing something related to ESG?
mm,
Develop a strategy on that, and then figuring out how to measure that. And so,
mm,
I mean, oftentimes when you think about the finance professional, you kind of start at the end and then think, okay, well, finance professionals are good at measuring things, therefore they must be involved. But it really goes back further than that. Um,
Mm,
you need to understand, what your object is, have that strategy, then figure out how to measure it. I say finance professionals are so perfectly situated to do just
mm.
that, but other people could as well who come from that deep knowledge base of operations.
hmm
I see.
hmm
Like, let's say right now, for example, if we have a pearl, like a manufacturer company, right? Like, as a working professional in the finance department, like, what aspects of those ESG that you need to take consideration on top of the financial reporting? If you can give us some like specific examples.
Yeah, well, if I just think about the
Mm,
different aspects of ESG, like the different pillars,
hmm
like
Hmm.
environmental, like that pillar includes managing emissions for an organization. And so you
mm,
need to have a strategy around what those emissions are, what your goals are, and being able to report. The use
mm,
of resources, such as water and other resources that are impacting the
Mm.
community. And the finance professional can figure out how to measure and manage how those are utilized. Thinking about the
mm,
S, social, that pillar includes things like employee development, safety for
Mm.
employees,
mm,
the supply chain, and really just access for underserved people. So social is really, really broad, but the social pillar really goes to the heart of the operations of an organization. These are things that the finance professional should know intimately to do their job. And
Yeah.
so they're able to see, okay, these different pieces in within an organization or the organization touches, these are the things that really matter to the people involved, and they can figure out how to manage and ultimately measure. And the governance, the G, is really all about having robust governance practices, solid processes, and accountability. That would
Hmm.
include things like how you're protecting your data. Speaking to the
mm.
data
Mm.
analyst here, how you're protecting your data, the transparency, including around having independent reporting, so you can ensure that you are providing
Oh.
comprehensive and transparent information to stakeholders. These are all things that the finance professionals are very equipped to lead and support.
Very helpful.
Wow, that's very
Yeah.
enlightening. Yeah, I touched somewhere that I've never thought about.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's so interesting that you can unpack so many layers, right? Like under this three letters ESG. But like Lori, so since you mentioned like the social responsibility, does that mean each company like these days they should feel obligated to like let's say donate whenever they make like profit, like give back to the society? Does that count like under this ESG pillar as well?
Yeah, some organizations certainly do that, and you often see buy this menu item, for example, and
Yeah,
$1 will go there. Yeah, so you
yeah.
do see that, but I think uh, what should really happen is there's something that's authentically linked to what the organization stands for,
I like it.
Mm,
and it kind of goes to the why. Like, why are you doing this? Well, one of the reasons why you're doing it is to make employees feel like you care and that they're valued. And so you might choose something that really resonates with employees. Another reason why you might do it is because your customer base really cares about something in particular. So you want to make sure
mm.
that you're appealing to that.
Mm.
So you need to figure out your why. Like, why are you doing this? And if you do understand why, then you can figure out from a strategic perspective what will make the biggest impact.
Wonderful.
Yeah, so I think I want to circle back to the leadership uh, piece because I'm going to say before this session, I feel like CPA is a very technical and then strongly systematical type of profession where you need a lot of techniques to be able to achieve it. But in what you're talking about, especially in this ESG area, the leadership in finance professional is very important as well. Sounds like so. I want to know better on how CPABC is improving the leadership in the CP professionals.
Yeah, no, that is a very perceptive question, and you're absolutely right. So many people think that accounting is all around numbers and really just keeping track of the money and reporting. And there certainly are skills, hard skills there that are important, absolutely. But what a CPA does goes well beyond that, and it is taking that information and figuring out how to interpret it, how to communicate it, how to add value to an
Mm,
organization based upon those metrics or the data that emerges. And so a CPA, and normally this happens more and more over one's career as they become
Hmm.
more experienced, you're
Hmm.
able to take that base level data and reporting and really add value in a broader way, in that leadership way that you're talking
Hmm.
about. And so to your question, a lot of the CPA program today is not just about the hard skills and ensuring that people can do accounting, understand that, but it's really the soft skills and how to take that, interpret it, explain it, and ultimately add value, make a difference, and really lead.
Mm.
I love it. I love it. I think you're doing something so valuable and so meaningful to the society. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times when we were thinking about people who are dealing with numbers, again, we would not expect so much more into the leadership, into the influence, into bringing people along. They're more just like focusing on their area. But what I'm
Exactly.
hearing right now is that the CPABC is really bringing that aspect to people to make an influence to those who are around them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, absolutely. And that's precisely why, I mean, you started off this podcast with pointing out that I mentioned the non-financial
I
impact and
know.
measurement of ESG. And yes, it is non-financial, but that's precisely why the finance professional should be involved, because those non-financial aspects ultimately lead to the long-term sustainability of the
that's right.
organization. And so you need to know the bigger picture of everything, not just the hard numbers of today. You need to know everything that impacts value and the ability of an organization to survive in the future. You need to know the big picture. And it's really equipping people with the knowledge about what that big picture is and making sure that they are developing a strategy to lead to wherever they want to go and
Yeah.
measure their success.
That's right. I think Laurie just answered our next question is how do we think that financial reporting and the risk
Yeah.
management can interact with ESG? But I think that was a wonderful answer that
I know.
you already answered that.
So since we already get that question answered, I just came up with a question. What do you see is the biggest challenge, either to make it happen with the CPA professionals, your students, or the network, or the companies, anything? Like, what do you see the biggest challenge here?
There's lots of challenges. And of course, it's all around change management, of course. But
Uh,
one of the biggest challenges is that so many organizations haven't done much or anything around ESG, and they don't have the data to support it. And so it's really a hard thing to get off the ground from a standing start. And so organizations really need to find ways to start to understand what they need, figure out how to get the data, and figure out ways to ensure the data is has the integrity necessary to ultimately be reported on. And that's hard when you're starting without a history, without data, without processes, without a way to ensure that the entire function has the integrity necessary. And so I think the biggest implementation challenge organizations will have is just getting started, and getting started
mm,
from nothing in many cases. And it is intimidating because ESG has become a bit of a buzzword and people don't really know how to start.
Mm,
And so that to me, it's starting from something that is intimidating. A lot of people don't have the knowledge around and they don't have the data to start with. It's a hard thing to get going, but once organizations start to take it on bit by bit, start to choose once they just one or two things to report on to start with and start building the data, then starts to become a little bit more achievable.
would you be able to give us a few examples, like exactly where they can start, especially if this is in the um, scope of work of a CPA or the finance professional within the company?
Yeah, so basically the most important thing is to choose your strategy and choose what to report on.
Hmm.
For
Hmm.
example, like many organizations are looking at their GHG emissions and what that impact is. That is a number, and they can find it and they can start to report on that. So it could be something that is quite narrow to start with, where there is there's actual data that you can
Hmm.
use. So it could be something like that. But it should be something ideally where there is some history of some reporting or some at least data collection in an area. That way you can look to see trends and the extent to which you're making a difference. And so it is choosing the aspects that are important to your organization. And frankly, for many organizations that have not been in this space, I probably wouldn't not start with looking at the standards and getting overwhelmed with those. I
Hmm.
instead would probably just choose one or two things that you think really matter to your business and could really help your strategy. And just getting close to that understanding, what is the one thing I could change and measure here that would make a difference to the long term sustainability of the organization? And just start building and growing from there and building up the muscle. And so you're used to
I
really
like that.
focusing and collecting the data.
I
Mm.
like that. Building the muscle. I like it.
Yeah. But in terms of like the data that you mentioned, right? Like understand, like if you wanted to start like a new initiative, maybe a company is lack of the resources that they can get access to. But do you also think that is maybe there's like some other resources, maybe from the government that we can leverage when we think about those environmental or social
Mm.
responsibilities?
Yeah, no, that's a super question. Now, in British Columbia, we have the new ESG Center for Excellence, and it is there to help to provide resources and guidance to small businesses. So that's a
Hmm.
great resource. And also, in the EU, they are ahead of us in Canada in terms of their reporting requirements. And
Mm,
so I think that Canadian companies will have an advantage in the sense that they will be able to look at public disclosures that are being produced in the EU as examples, as precedents, and just get some ideas
Oh,
in terms of what they are choosing to report on. Because many of those companies are being required to report this year in the EU.
mm,
In Canada, it's
ah,
still voluntary. So we have the advantage of being able to look at the public record, what they have reported, and see a whole
interesting.
bunch of examples.
that's wonderful.
Oh, that's
I
very helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually want to comment on Laurie's thing that you said, Europe, they're far ahead than us. Like from my personal experience, I completely agree with you because when I talk to my friend who lives in France, like sometimes we talk about traveling, and then like the first thing that they think of is, oh, what is your
Greenhouse
like
emission.
your yeah like a greenhouse emission like if like if you could take trains like why would you take planes. I think that's
Mhm.
something that at least I feel it's not as common of a sense from
Mhm.
us people in North America versus people like who are in France or just
Mm.
like anywhere else like in the Europe. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. And I hope that we do get further along in terms of ESG. But right now, I'm actually happy they're ahead because it is hard for many organizations to take this on and get to that level. And we have lots of examples to look at with them.
Mm, yeah.
Yeah.
I think another example I wanted to see is that like even for my company that I have noticed changes that for example like before we would provide those disposable plates or cups in the kitchenettes,
Mm.
but over the last years or two that we've seen that those become those metal ones, and so like
Ah.
I could see where we're trying to make some little progress.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think what we're doing, it's like we can see the results.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And actually, this what you said just reminds me of, all the different stakeholders and people that really care. And there's so many employees that really, really, truly care about the
Mm.
impact their organization is having on the environment and on their community. And so embracing ESG, kind of goes to the why I was talking about before, might be something an organization chooses to do because their employees expect it and they want it. And the organization wants to be a great corporate citizen, and so they follow through. And so you just need to
Mm,
figure out your why, and it could be to really make sure those employees who are using your kitchen
yeah.
really respect what you're doing as an organization and how you are giving back.
Mm. I actually have a question, Lori. So this company that I used to work for is a manufacturer company, right? Like, and then we produce like drinks and stuff. So I remember there used to be a dilemma that we're facing is that, like when you buy cans, that you can have those like high con, which is like plastic, right? That it's very, very bad for the environment, especially for like the like turtles or fish, right? Like all these kind of stuff.
Mhm.
So like we know it's not good for the environment. But the cost of it is significantly lower than
Um,
having for example, a
cardboard
disposable
ones.
cardboard one that you can carry the six pack of your drinks.
Mm.
So, how does a working or like a financial profession or the CFO of company should make decision under this ESG pillar in a situation like this?
Oh, well, that's a terrific question. There absolutely is a tension because to try to do the right thing and make those sustainable choices, there it comes at a cost, and
Yes.
not all costs can be justified. And that oftentimes leads to what the role is of the legislature in all this. And in BC, for example, they have banned plastic bags,
Mm,
and that's because different finance professionals haven't been able to make the choice, and so it's been imposed imposed by government. So it is, trying to make the right decision for the stakeholders and your environment that matter, bearing in mind the financial costs. And I think it's also true that where the market doesn't come to the right answer, that's where the legislature kicks in and will impose some real.
Mm.
it's great.
Yeah, that's a great perspective. Um, because again, my financial department in my previous companies, and they're always more in a way of like supporting the business kind of thing. But I keep hearing that they should somewhat act like an activator for this whole ESG initiatives. And then, how would you encourage the CPA professionals to like step up more or put themselves out more to influence in a greater scale in their own companies?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. It makes me really reflect on the history of where ESG has come from because it was a number of years ago common to see that ESG function sort of in a separate department. It often was called corporate social responsibility.
Yes. Yeah,
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 and
yeah.
now it's
CSR.
been,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And now many organizations have moved it. They don't call it corporate social responsibility any longer. Now it's called ESG. And it's been moved under that, usually under the CFO role. So it's directly part of the finance component of an organization in recognition of how ESG is so fundamental to an organization's long-term success. So that's what I think has happened. And to your question, how does a finance professional really ensure that they have impact? Well, one of the places to start would be if that ESG function is not already under the CFO portfolio, I would maybe advocate for it to be
Have a
there.
cool.
That's right.
Yeah, I'd advocate for it to be there because to me it really
Mm,
does go to the heart of
great
the
point.
long-term sustainability of an organization. So you need it to be there to really have that influence in a really, material way that will go right to the long-term
Mm.
success of the organization.
Yeah, I happen to live the age of CSRs under communications. It's part of
Okay.
my department. And then it's all about the corporate image. I mean, it's still a good thing they're doing good things to keep their good image, but definitely nowadays it's so much different. And then I think this is a great starting point for our CPA fellows to advocate if it's still not under your department yet.
Yeah,
Exactly, exactly.
absolutely. Embrace
Add
it.
it under your scope. Yes, embrace it. That's right.
Yeah.
So I guess I would like to have Lori to share a little bit more on the generic strategy about the CPABC moving along, and also, as you've mentioned, about the resource to support more CPA fellows to embrace the ESG and then make a bigger impact.
Sure. So one thing that we have done at CPABC is we have voluntarily started to report on ESG metrics in our annual report on our website. And we did that not because we were required to, but because we thought it was the right thing to do. And we wanted to set that example for the profession. And so what we did is we figured out different things we could report on. We have developed a strategy in terms of things as an organization that we think are important and that we can impact, and we'll
Mm,
continue to report. And so that's one thing that we as an organization have done, but also
Mm.
are very mindful of our role in terms of educating our members and our students and providing for them resources and materials and ways to become educated around ESG. And we've had hundreds of courses and podcasts
I know.
and articles and different ways by which we're trying to get the information and message out and to provide ways for the CPAs to become more educated around ESG.
that's wonderful. that you mentioned the framework that you have been using for CPABC. Like, do you think that those framework can easily be migrated or just borrowed by some other organizations out there so they can follow like this thing and then to trying to do the right thing?
I think so. And in fact, that's one of the reasons why we did it,
Mm,
because we wanted to show that we think it's important. And we therefore made it part of our annual report this past year.
Hmm.
And we expect that some CPAs will take a look at it and maybe choose to, you know, think about their organization in a similar way. So that's exactly one of the reasons why we did it.
it's wonderful. Yeah, hopefully all
Yeah.
the CPAs out there can get inspired and then to, follow Laurie's great path and yeah, utilize all the resources out there
Yeah,
to,
you provide a lot of service for your members.
Yeah, we really do believe that a CPA is a lifelong journey, and it's not just getting your
Hmm.
CPA, but really it's the ongoing education and ongoing finding ways to provide value to your organization or to your clients. And so, therefore, it's our role not just to get people to achieve their CPA, but also to ensure that their education is constantly growing and that will continue to expand as there's different areas that CPAs need to be knowledgeable about.
Mm,
That's awesome. Yeah.
yeah. Is there any other resources, Laurie, that you would like to share with the fellow CPAs out there, who might already be a taking a leading role in any other company, so they can come back and then do well in the ESG field?
Yeah, I'll just point out that the CPA Canada website also has a number of resources around
Mm.
ESG that would be very valuable to any CPA. They're all just on their website, in addition to what we have for CPABC. And like I mentioned
Right.
before, just the other precedents we have about from organizations, big organizations that we have in Canada, and also smaller ones in the EU that are now starting to report.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Well, yeah. Thank you very much, Lori. Yeah, it's very, very insightful and then very strategic and on high level. We really appreciate that.
Yeah, I think the education that you give us and today or to the ESG, I think has been very enlightening and even for just us to think about what we can do, right? Like in our day-to-day job
Yeah.
to follow this ESG pillars. Yeah.
Yeah. And also your suggestion of advocating for that to move under the financial department is great. I love it.
Yes.
Hmm.
Well, thank you so much, Flora and Calvin, for your insightful questions and how much you care about the topic and how you're trying to bring that information to your listeners. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very
Thank you,
much,
Laurie.
Lori. Yeah. Yeah. It's our honor.
Yeah.
It's our great honor to have you.
Thank you.
Thank
Okay,
you.
I think this is for today with Lori, and we will post all the links in our show notes of the resources that mentioned in the show. And yeah, hopefully you get inspired, the fellow CPAs out there. Wow, Calvin, that was a lot of education today.
I know. I feel like me personally, I learned a lot, right? Because when before we thought about CPA, I think about numbers and
I
just
know,
financial reporting,
supporting.
supporting, right? Exactly.
Yeah,
So I
no.
never think anything beyond that perspective. And then especially now, Lori gave us a very thoughtful and very full perspective of how CPA should be interactive with ESG and then how we as a financial professional should follow this ESG pillar and then to do our job. So I really appreciate Lori's insights.
Yeah, and then my main takeaway is it's definitely very important for your career development as an individual. All right, so thank you again for listening.
Yeah, so thank you. And please, all the audience, you can continue fighting us on YouTube and Spotify, as well as Apple Podcast. And then we will see you again next Wednesday.
See you next Wednesday. Bye bye.